Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Obviously, you can see that today's show is not a live stream. This is just simply a recording because things are moving so fast. I mean, have you noticed, Thomas, that I've been sending out 2 cat reports a day for the last few days?
And they're stuffed with really great things.
I mean, just jam-packed because things are really moving. This is the great information war, and our lead warrior is I call him the troller-in-chief. That is Donald J. Trump. He is killing the other side with great information.
Absolutely. The more they attack him, the more it boomerangs and hits him in the head with the Trump effect.
So that having been said, we're going to keep everybody updated, we're going to have to pick up our own speed in doing these recordings. We're going to do them the way that we used to, just doing the verbal so you can listen to us while you're doing your chores, driving to work, whatever. Thomas, let's update. Today is October 3rd. What did you see in the news today that interested you? Tie it up. Show us the way forward.
Well, the Ukrainian attempted impeachment is going to impeach the wrong people. It's going to take out Adam Schiff. It's going to take out Pelosi. Why? Because they're on the Ukrainian payroll. They always have been. Igor Pasternak came over to America. He's in California. He got a DARPA project for $60 million and then sued the government for $65 million after he won that. So basically, for making his little air balloons, this man went from being, making $120 million off his first project here to now being the largest arms dealer, one of the largest in the world. He took Daddy Bush's place of Adnan Khashoggi. Basically, he is the arms dealer for Syria, for Libya, for you name it. He's in Hillary's pocket. And Igor Pasternak.
Is Fox News reporting this to the people?
No, it has come out in a number of places, though.
But the point is Fox News is not reporting this.
No.
Well, see, folks, you got to stay away from this corporate media at this phase of the information war, because what they've got over there is sheer propaganda. The father of lies, spewing deceit, lies, and propaganda to mess up your mind. So keep going. Tell us what Fox News is not telling us.
Anything on Fox News that's good, Trump's going to put on his Twitter feed.
Yeah.
So you don't even need to watch it, because they're not going to tell you that why is Schiff and Pelosi completely compromising themselves, because they were already compromised to begin with. Okay, let's just break it down in case you don't understand this. The entire Congress is based upon how long you're there. And the longer you're there, the more corrupt you are. And then you have to, of course, disclose your accounts. And how come every single long-tenured member of the Senate or the House are multi-millionaires, hundreds of millions usually, when they make, less than $200,000 a year? How can that possibly be true? Well, that's because they all get paid off. So who is paying off Pelosi and Schiff? In this case, it's a Uranian, Igor Pasternak. He's not a Uranian. He is from Kazakhstan. He is a Russian, pure and clear. And you see, when you say he's a Ukrainian, he's a Russian, like Alexander Chalupa, I believe she's a total Russian spy. She was working in Ukraine, and she then utilized the oligarchs that Schiff and Schumer and the whole Democratic Party went over and tried to get a piece of these Ukrainian oligarchs. Now, everything was going great for 8 years when Obama was in the White House. Why? Because we gave $4.7 million through the State Department, which included Hillary Clinton and particularly Victoria Nuland, to have 2 George Soros-sponsored color revolutions to take out Viktor Yanukovych, who was the duly elected president in Ukraine twice. Why? So they could have the Nazi party come to power there, who would then oppose any deal with Russia. Now, here's the problem. The big oil pipeline running out of Kazakhstan through Turkmenistan, and then through Russia, and then to Ukraine, and then into Europe, was bringing in 40% of the gross domestic product of Ukraine. When Obama, because he was trying to act like a tough guy, in one of the last days in his office, put sanctions on Russia for meddling in the election, which they didn't do, what he actually did was he created this gigantic crisis in Ukraine. He assumed that Trump was going to come in, take the sanctions off, and then they could blame Trump for that and say, oh, how bad you are. Well, Trump didn't. So what happened? Inadvertently, Obama caused an explosion in Ukraine. So all the oligarchs and all of the party of regions who were friends of Joe Biden, who were friends of Pelosi, of Schiff, of Schumer, and friends, of course, working through Igor Pasternak, friends working through Mikhail Khodorkovsky, as well as other Ukrainians like Leonard Blavatnik, one of the largest donors to the Democratic Party, especially their super PACs, who works through another, well, he works through a Russian, Viktor Veskleberg, who's in Russia, but he also works through an Israeli, Mikhail Friedman. These are the people donating to the Democratic Party. Now, you may think I'm crazy for saying this, but I'm going to prove this to you in just a second. Super PACs don't have to state where the money came from. In the 2018 election, we saw that George Soros came in and said that with his super PACs, he was going to make sure to take the positions of most of the Secretary of States that have Republicans in those positions. He wanted every Secretary of State in every state to be a Democrat. That was his 2000. What did he do that with? Super PACs, where he bought last-minute campaigns and flooded the waves.
And people think, oh, Secretary of State, they don't worry about it. It's not a big position. But in that position, then, these Secretary of States were able then to be sold on this new software that Soros and Romney have, which is called the Optech software. So you see, it was about getting people in position and then getting them to a place that they would accept the software into the rigged election boxes.
Exactly. And it's a trick. For instance, elections. Oleg Deripaska gave, we don't even know. We know it's at least $10 million for opposition research against Trump to Glenn Pencorder Group after Fusion GPS could no longer do it after $12 million came out of the Democratic National Committee to buy opposition research, which created the Christopher Steele dossier. Well, what we're dealing with here is Oleg Deripaska is what? He's one of the richest men in... The people I just named are some of the richest people in Russia. They are the oligarchs. They are the mafia oligarchs who, if you do not pay your dues to Putin, he is simply going to do to you what he did to Magnitsky, which was involved with Bill Browder, an American.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you asked about Bill Browder, because we got a note today from one of our conclave members that said, please have Douglas explain to us how Bill Browder works with the Russians.
Bill Browder's grandfather was the head of the U.S. Communist Party. And his dad was a genius, and he very intelligently used that genius that he got from his father and his connections with the fact that he's married to a Russian, and so his mother was Russian. So he went over to Russia, and he basically ripped them off in the standard way that we do, using Goldman Sachs type of manipulation, George Soros type of economic predatory capital manipulation, currency manipulation, so on and so forth. Anyway, he went over and he bought into the biggest companies in Russia. He's an American. Time came for him to pay taxes. Nope, he becomes a Brit. Many of these people who are the Russian, Ukrainian oligarchs, when you say Ukrainian, just strike the word Ukrainian. That's Russian. So, when you're talking about Ukrainians, oligarchs, those are just the nouveau riche. Those are the nouveau oligarchs. Those are the new oligarchs of Ukraine created by Obama. Why? Because it was the heyday of U.S. Attempts to intervene into Ukraine to make sure that the oblast provinces that were voting to have Russia control them, not the Party of Regents, the Nazi Party in Ukraine, who Joe Biden was aligned with, and Obama was aligned with, Hillary was aligned with, John Kerry was aligned with, and they were all paid. They all took trips over there all the time, and they were all paid for by these Ukrainians. But remember, then the people of Ukraine would vote Viktor Yanukovych back into office, and then they'd be on the outs. So the Americans who had invested $4.7 billion in taking over Ukraine so they could control that pipeline, so they thought they could control Russia, which they can't. Russia was building 2 other pipelines at the same time, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 1 now goes to Germany in a secret deal. So what we have is when the sanctions got put on Russia, the pipeline into Ukraine stopped. 40% of Ukrainian GDP stopped. Well, you don't take a bunch of mafia Russian oligarchs aligned with the demon rat party of America. And I've named these people. I can name the amounts they gave. Igor Pasternak has given over $100,000 each campaign for Pelosi and for super PACs that supported Pelosi and Adam Schiff and others, particularly major Democrats, particularly tenured, long-standing, the oldest ones. You know that Maxine Waters is the second oldest Democrat? If Pelosi died tomorrow, they'd probably put Maxine Waters up to be the person who would be third in line to be the president. And remember, all of this impeachment is an attempt for Pelosi to become the president. Make no mistake about it. They changed all the rules. We no longer have a constitutional republic in the House of on the Hill there, Capitol Hill. We have an attempted coup of the House, which is an attempted coup of the president, which had already used the intelligence agencies to the best of their ability, and every one of our Five Eyes friends and many other spies in other countries, including Ukraine, including Estonia, including hardly at all in Russia, but certainly Britain, which was the source of it, Canada, Australia, Italy, Germany. They were all involved in the coup, and that is what is coming down now.
Patriots. You look at what's going on and you think, who in the world has Trump's back? It's you. You on the other end listening to us. You are the thought leaders. You have been with us for 2, sometimes even 3 years, and you have listened to what the truth is. You have listened to Truth News, and you have listened to Truth History. If you want to continue to support Donald Trump, the best thing you can do is to find a way to educate and enlighten as many people as you can using the skills and the talents that you have. You are the voice out there. We, the people, we are the ones that elected Donald Trump. We're the ones that are going to overcome all of this, get him back in office in 2020, and keep America great. So those are your marching orders from Miss Betsy. Start thinking of ways that you can get out the word better than you have today.
You know, Betsy, I've been trying to think up a better name for the demon rats, the Democrats, the far left, fascist, socialist, every word I can think of, Marxism, chaos Marxism, communism, Chinese communism, Russian communism. I couldn't think of a word, but whatever it is, I need to spit afterwards. And the only word for sure that I always spit afterwards is when I say George Soros. And we need to remember that George Soros has given $32 billion to the Democratic Party. Now, how do I mean that? Through super PACs, $6 billion. He went to the limit on that he could legally, but then through super PACs, he's literally the only person in some of these super PACs. And then he has 184 non-government organizations that all claim to be not-for-profit. They should all be closed down because they're all partisan. Any not-for-profit, if they do not state that, and none of his organizations do, they all have names like, how about this one? The one that just created the whistleblower. And you're going to love what I'm about to tell you, but let's just go back to what I was saying. Let's change the Demon Rat Party to the party of George Soros, because it's the Open Society Party, the society of open borders on their southern borders. It is the party of globalism. It's the party of the United Nations. It's the party of the Privy Council of the monarch of the United Kingdom.
It's the party of Cecil Rhodes, of digital tyranny. It is the party that we must reject if we want to keep humanity going on. And I'll tell you, what this really comes down to is this is the father of lies. And the father of lies is using the media as its mouthpiece. That's why you get propaganda and lies from it, and why we must help people understand that listening to this stuff is just evil.
Let me just give you a perfect example. the Ukrainian whistleblower. Well, first off, we can sit here and, everyone's poking holes in that story, the Russian collusion 2.0, isn't it? Same people, same story, same bad delivery, same bad planning, and no content whatsoever. But what we want to point out is it all comes down to conversations that were had with the whistleblower and the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. Go to the bottom of their page, look them up. The OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. This is all a staged game.
Is that a .org or a .com?
Don't know. I would say Google it, but I hate Google.
Okay.
Dogpile it.
All right, I'll put it in the notes.
So, if you look them up online, go to the bottom, look at their number one donor, the Open Society, George Soros. So all we have is fake evidence created illegally by the OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project of George Soros, where supposedly this whistleblower, who breaking every law there is, including every security contract that he has, to come to a public organization, supposedly a not-for-profit, which it isn't, of course, so it should be closed down immediately, and reporting to them, and then they told him to report to Adam Schiff. Not to the Inspector General, which everyone in any branch of the government knows. When you have a problem, you report to your IG office immediately. There's an IG for every major agency, practically. You simply go, and if you don't, you can't make a report. And by the way, it was always first-hand information with evidence, never second-hand. Not even what you heard with your own ears counted in the original days, but now they've changed that for them. And when you go to the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project page now, they beg you to come up with some secondhand information to please report on Trump. Go ahead. I dare you. Go there, look. This is nothing more than a cesspool of an attempt for George Soros to find people who he can corrupt by paying off with stories like that Ford lady who accused Kavanaugh, who should be put in jail for what she did. This whistleblower should go to jail for what they did. But now, no, we're singing the praises of the OCCRP.
A lot of times I hear from folks and they go, how in the world could George Soros do all of this harm to humanity and no one can get him, arrest him, try him? And my answer used to be, well, he's protected by the Queen, so we're not going to be able to get to him. But as Michael McKibben's researchers showed, and Michael's not here, please speak to the point, is that really we're looking at he's being protected by the Pilgrim Society. Now, is George Soros a member of the Pilgrim Society? Do we know? What is his relationship there? And how is he protected? We can't get this guy.
Well, it doesn't really matter what society George Soros is part of. He has such deep pockets, and he's supported by the rogue CIA and all of the rogue intelligence groups from all the different countries, because he goes in and destabilizes countries. That's the job of the CIA, is it not? And he does it for the CIA does it for our corporations, American corporations, and European Union. They have their intelligence groups that do it for themselves, but Soros does it for himself. And so he always lies to everyone who's participating with him now. So you can't really tell. But yes, he is certainly the archetypal Pilgrim Society member.
But he's not, no, I don't see anybody taking him down. We got to take this guy down.
He has to go down. I've said the number one thing on the list is to take down George Soros. He gave $18 billion of stolen money that he paid no taxes on through his quantum hedge fund, which is actually pays no taxes at all, but then they all pay the George Soros investment fund, or whatever he calls it. He's got his central group. That central group hasn't paid any taxes in all the years he's been that group has existed. $18 billion in the money he skimmed off of America. He turned back on America and bought his way into 184 controlling donations to the non-government organizations that are almost all run by NGOs. And by the way, when Obama was president, anytime he ever gathered up any money from corruption from the SEC or anything else, he threw it at those same NGOs, which is illegal. He took taxpayer dollars and gave it to supposedly not-for-profit organizations flying as a false flag, who in fact don't pay taxes and are strictly demon rats.
Well, I've often thought that it's not a spiritual coincidence that George Soros's name is so close to that being of Sorath. Not saying that Soros is Sorath, but certainly you look at the energetic qualities of these beings, and that's what you see. Speak to Sorath.
Oh, Soros, we've done exposés on him, intelligence reports that show that he believes he's God. He said at first it was a little difficult adjusting to being God. But then when he found out that money can basically buy anything in the world, he got used to it. That is almost a word-for-word quote of George Soros. Now, the $18 billion that he poured back into America attempted to rig the 2020 elections. Some of that money also went to Strategic Communications Laboratory and all kinds of other places. But now what do we have? Oh no, he's morphed again. He always keeps morphing and he always changes his names. So Tide organization, but you can't hide the Open Society donations to all these organizations or Tides Foundation. But now there's 340 groups. And who does he support now? Oh, he just has to make one donation to the Arabella Advisors that is ran by Eric Kessler. And Eric Kessler was a founding member of the Clinton Global Initiative. And out of that group, just in this particular project, to make sure that they tried to hide the money, thinking that people would look and find the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, which they want all Democrats to find, and with hearsay, report anything you can about Trump. I'm going to call up and say I'm a Democrat and I want him impeached because he's orange. He's the orange man.
Well, while you're at it, if you're a Democrat, can you find out from Donna Brazile what happened to Seth Rich? I mean,
I only laugh in the way that you present that.
No, but look, it works both ways, patriots. We can inundate them with some questions we have, too. Like Bill Clinton, we heard through the grapevine that Bill Clinton is not only a rapist, he's a pedophile. What, is anybody doing anything about that?
Well, we had... What was it? A number of women at the debate when Hillary debated that sat in the front row who said they'd been raped.
That's not even through the grapevine.
And the two of them, Hillary fought them.
Right.
And tried to pay them off and extorted them and tried to muscle them.
I mean, here's the thing. We know that there are two sets of rules, theirs and ours. They make us play by ours, and ours is the Constitution, the rule of law, morality. Theirs is some bizarre thing that lets them do anything, including killing the most innocent of human life and using their baby parts to extend their own longevity. So this is evil. But we have to remember there are more of us than there are of them. And right now, they're making us play by their rules. But if we get enough momentum and we get enough patriots worldwide, we can flip this narrative and we can start making them play by our rules.
Absolutely. We can just say no more super PACs.
No, I'm talking about no more killing babies and pedophilia and blackmail to, all the disgusting things that I just hate to look at. That's what I'm talking about. Patriots, let's flip this narrative and make them, these evil people, live by our rules.
Oh, yeah. Well,
based on Christian beliefs.
We just have to enforce the law, and that's what's causing
the Constitution.
Insanity in Washington District of Crime, is that Trump said, I'm the sheriff, and I'm going to enforce the law. And now they're all going insane. They're going out of their minds. So I'm going to describe to you what's really going on here, okay? So these 340 groups. The recent one, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. I keep saying that because I want you as the audience to understand that name will no longer be there shortly. It's going to come and go. Just like the following four groups that they work out of to hide their efforts, called the New Venture Fund, or the 1630 Fund, or the Hopewell Fund, or the Windward Fund. All sound so nice, don't they? But if you actually look on this, these are some of the secret names that were used by the Vulcan group. These are actually tongue-in-cheek names. And the second one is actually practically the same name as a British spy group, intelligence group that leads us by the nose all the time. So when they name these things, they come and they go. 184 now 340. This is since the last time I looked, which was probably a year and a half ago. So now I can tell you, can come up with 340 names of groups that received the $32 billion of Soros. And let's remember, it was Soros who gave $6 billion, $2 billion for 3 campaigns in a row to determine that Barack Obama, the real Barry Sanders, would win instead of Hillary. So the reason we don't have Queen Hillary right now, and Soros is kicking himself in the rear, is he went with Obama, not Hillary.
And that would be Barry Soetoro, not Barry Sanders.
Oh,
it's Bernie Sanders, Barry Soetoro.
Sorry, and by the way, Bernie didn't have a heart attack.
Big Mike Obama.
Okay, I want to say to all my Bernie followers out there, Bernie did not have a heart attack, y'all. He's taken the fall exactly like Soros told him to at the exact right time, so he can keep all the money Soros gave him and use it for his next elections. It goes into your political war chest. Everybody knows this. That's what he did last time. He didn't even use the money he carried over. You know how much money of Soros money was carried over in the second election of Obama? $10 million he didn't use that he turned into the OFA by changing simply the word, but the same exact letters, which is nothing but a Saul Alinsky group. What is that? That's Soros money. We have to stop Soros and his son Alexander, because who did Alexander meet with after Soros? We had started busting Soros, and then other people started busting Soros, and then he got busted in Romania, in Macedonia, in Hungary, in his own nation, Hungary, where they basically have kicked him out, closed down his universities. He got busted, so he took all the money he had stolen from taxes, $8 billion, and poured it back into the American NGOs. And these are the groups I just named. And they're all coordinated by one man. Just like David Brock is so nice that he coordinates 10 different Soros NGOs out of his one office with one telephone, and then claims all this tax deduction that he should have because he's a not-for-profit, that he should get money back, actually, and that he's a not-for-profit, which he is not. It's the same thing. It's called the Arabella Group, Arabella Advisors. But they have many groups. And then Eric Kessler runs it, who, as I said, started the Clinton Global Initiative. Now, how much more corrupt can you get than that?
Can I ask you another question, that's like totally off of the George Soros topic?
Well, let me just add one more thing.
Okay.
You've heard Betsy and I go on and on about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which was basically the first super PAC ever set up. Because why? Foreign nations give. Oh, they say they don't, but they do, because they're corporations that simply incorporate here in America, but they're run by Chinese nationalists or wherever, it doesn't matter, Russians, Ukrainians, doesn't matter. At Igor Pasternak runs supposedly an American company, and he's not really an American. He's Kazakhstani. He's a Russian. He's a Ukrainian. He's probably was a Brit at one point and an Israeli. Now he's a U.S. citizen. And he gets tons of money from us to do what? Do arms deal with who? Syria. Libya. Our enemies. So Adam Schiff and Pelosi have dinner with and have fundraisers with, $2,500 fundraisers in one of his many multi-million-dollar homes throughout the country. And then they know that when they promote, what did Adam Schiff for the last 2.5 years say? More weapons to Ukraine. And who did they use? Same people. Dmitry Alperovitch said that there was this war going on in the Oblast, where they actually voted to go back to having Russian rule, and they started a big war. Dmitry Alperovitch helped start that war, the man who said that he went and looked at the DNC server. That's the reason that Trump said, do you got the server there? Because, Dmitry Alperovitch worked for Alexandra Chalupa, who says she's Ukrainian, and worked with you guys and forced your government to come up with the Manafort fake ledgers of $27 million from the World Bank, forced you to come up with the material on Rick Gates, and forced to come up with the material on they almost gave up their 3 top oligarchs of the Party of Regents for Hunter Biden and Chris Hines going there and being put in positions they don't deserve. Because why? The pipeline was closed off, so those oil companies were going to get rich. So the Bidens had to go there and get the money. And by the way, the deal they did in China, Hunter Biden was on the official trip of our vice president. And during that trip, 10 days later, he got a $1.5 billion deal. Not even Trump has got a $1.5 billion deal with the Chinese. Nobody, not even Eric Schmidt, nobody, not even James Breyer, nobody has ever got money out of China. But Hunter Biden and Chris Hines did. $1.5 billion. They just handed them and said, go do with it what you want. We don't care because we know you're idiots, and we know we should be giving it to Goldman Sachs and everybody else. But no, they gave it to those bimbos.
Okay. Before I ask my question, to move off this topic.
Oh, super PACs, U.S. Chamber of Commerce gives to the Uniparty. The number one donor is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that takes foreign funds and gives it to the uniparty, any globalists, senators.
And they recommend people like Elaine Chao to be the Secretary of Transportation.
They demand.
Yes.
They lobby. They're the biggest lobby group on the Hill.
Patriots, if you see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is supporting a candidate, those are big bells and whistles for you to pay attention to. Now, I want to ask this question, but before I do have something to say about CrowdStrike. You see, over these last few years, as the Democrats have been running their little Russia Gate operation, I believe that Trump and his trusted colleagues have been digging deep into the crime overall. And they realized what we realized, that the fulcrum point right there is this CrowdStrike. And Trump is playing like 45D chess with these people when he has them open up the document and see the one word, CrowdStrike. And that's taken down the whole thing. It's like a controlled demolition. Instead of dancing Israelis putting those little, what do you call those blasters all around the Twin Towers? You know, we all saw the pictures of that. We all know this was an operation much bigger than box cutters and planes flying into the towers. We don't buy that bullshit from the government. We will not accept it. But anyway, you say the word CrowdStrike, and all that comes down in a controlled demolition.
Absolutely. It was similar like saying, when they have the head person in charge looking at Tower 7 saying, pull it! Mm-hmm. And then within 3 seconds, the building goes down in controlled demolition. So that's what he did, because he basically said, Burisma. Now, let me tell you what's going on. You're so right. You haven't said that before. And so the conclave is all over there going, and they're pointing and pointing. So here I'm going to say what needs to be said here. Trump, and we didn't tell anybody this, already went after Burisma. That is why Hunter Biden got fired. If Joe Biden went there and said, you're not going to get $1.5 billion in U.S. aid because I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell John Kerry and I'm going to tell Hillary and they're just not going to give it to you. I'm going to make a call. I got 6 hours. He actually called Britain, and Britain called, and that's the reason that they fired that prosecutor. It wasn't America. That's, I can guarantee you. So what happened? Well, when Trump came to power, he knew that. He saw this just as you said. He worked with Joe Maguire. We told everybody Joe Maguire was his man, but we didn't tell you his name because I didn't want to give it away. But we told you where he worked, and everybody ignored us. Now he's becoming who? The ODNI, an office that shouldn't exist.
His testimony, people say, was a little vanilla the other day.
He has to, in the first time out, not stir the water.
Okay.
Look what happened with the previous acting attorney general, and look what's happened with Barr, because they've simply spoken the truth. So what did Trump do? He worked through the U.S. Treasury Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and he put sanctions on Burisma, and they fired Hunter and Chris Hines immediately.
So see, Patriots, there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes that we will never know.
We could have told you that, but it would have meant nothing to you.
Okay.
Because then it would have been like, oh no, we almost had evidence that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Chris Hines and John Kerry did wrong in Ukraine, and now it's gone. It's not gone yet.
Okay, here's another thing that was like a surface, and you go, oh, what's going on here? And this is all of those staffers that received letters, those State Department staffers that received letters. I don't know what the letter said. I haven't seen the actual letter, but it's reported that they were reminded that they were sending Hillary and receiving classified emails on her bathroom server, her little Gmail account. So what's really happening there?
That's the beginning, folks. That's some of those should be indictments, but they're not. They're a warning. They're a shot across the bow from Barr saying, okay, you people who listen to the SES members, don't worry about them. I'll take care of them. The senior executive service members, your bosses who don't know anything. You career bureaucrats, you're going to listen to me, because all of you, 130 of you, that's just on the 7th floor. That's just the people dealing with Hillary from her department that had direct communications with her, and every single communication, every single one, has a term, because you broke your security agreement, of something like 10 years and $50,000. So every single time they send a message or receive from her, one from her on a non-secure line, they go to jail for that length of time. That's the law.
And these are your low-hanging fruit kind of staffers. They live in your community. They're soccer moms. You see them at the Boy Scout meetings. They're just regular folks. They may not know the level of corruption that exists in the senior executive service, but they have to be pretty unnerved to get this letter and know full well that they did participate in this. And wait a minute. I know you're leaning forward. It was then reported, or maybe I heard it through the grapevine, that Democrat operatives were calling and contacting these people and telling them not to lawyer up.
All this means is that William Barr is getting hold of his agency, and that Pompeo is getting hold of his agency, and he knows he's going to be backed by the Justice Department, and he's saying, I'm sorry, these are crimes. I go to jail if I don't report you, because that's the way it reads. Period. And I said this along with the conclave, screaming out of our mind. We had to have cappuccino after cappuccino. We ate every dessert in the icebox. And why? Because we knew that when James Comey came out and said what he did to exonerate Hillary, we said, wrong. That means that there are hundreds of people who have to go to jail over this, because each and every one of them that ever communicated with her on an open line about even her schedule, where she is, what she's doing, anything like that whatsoever, that is a massive crime. And we know that Obama used a fake name. We know that Lynch and all of them, Comey, they all use fake names and use Gmail accounts to communicate with Hillary Clinton, even when she was in foreign countries.
But this immobilizes to some degree these bureaucrats that Obama had in place to obstruct what Trump wanted to do. Kind of, you would be worried because you're thinking about your everyday life and your paycheck and not going to jail.
The BlackBerry that they always show in her hand, I want people to understand this. This is most important. That BlackBerry was set to automatically download to basically anything that came near it, because that's what she did. She couldn't use a machine, so she had the BlackBerries and the BlackBerries of her people and their computers all set up so that all she had to do was walk near it and they all synced.
She's like an information whore. She had all this information about America, and she hoarded over the whole planet. And that is what the whore of Babylon is.
And her and the Democratic caucus and John Podesta and the Democratic National Committee and her particular server, and Pagliano needs to go to jail. He wouldn't even answer their questions. These people who set these things up for them, all of them, need to go to jail because they didn't even have clearances, and they knew that what they were doing was a national security risk. Worse than a risk, it was basically an open line to the Chinese and to every single foreign agent that wants to harm America. That's the way it was. They all knew that. And Imran Alwan saw that and got in on it, and was so, the security on the Hill was so bad that he got 80 different people's, all their security codes for their phones, for their BlackBerries, for their iPads, for their computers. The whole thing was running through Basira's office and being sent to Pakistan. This is a known fact. And that is the reason that Trump is well advised to say, hey, did you have the server? What he really is trying to say, but he did it as a genius, he was saying, I know that you said that you had the 33,000 missing Hillary emails. That's what Joseph Mifsud was going to dangle and was supposedly dangling, and that's what Stephen Halper and all of them tried to dangle, was the 33,000 missing emails, which we know the CIA and the FBI had copies of, and they used them for frame-ups.
And of course, Barr was over in Italy, either listening to audio tapes or interviewing Mifsud.
It seems that is confirmed. Now, what is surprising about that? Nothing. That is what's supposed to be happening. How about the secret trips of John Brennan to Ukraine under a false name with a false passport that has now come out? What about John Brennan's almost secret trip to meet with people in Russia that weren't even connected to the same agency as here in America? That's when he got the GRU names, by the way. We've told you that, and someday that may come out. But he went there to actually gather information, both from Ukraine as an undercover agent and to Russia. And remember, he paid Sergei Millian and others, paid Sergei Millian $100,000 to get pictures or a video of Trump naked with whores, which there was one that Sergei Millian surfaced, and it wasn't Trump. We now hear that he paid anybody anything, John Brennan did, to get any picture of any compromise with Trump because he had started the EC. The whole thing of Crossfire Hurricane was through an electronic communication from Brennan to Comey and to the Department of Justice and also to the State Department and everybody else, which basically said, I heard from so-and-so, who I can't name, that someone in Estonia said that someone in Ukraine said that someone in Russia said that there was compromised material on Trump with him in this hotel with these horrors during the time that he was there for the Miss Universe pageant and blah, 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 that he has been paid through Alpha Bank, blump, blump, blump. All lies. That was already rolled into their attempt to get a FISA request starting back in March of 2016 on Carter Page, who they planted in Trump's campaign, right? Well, they planted all kinds of people in Trump's campaign. But what I'm trying to get at is Trump knew all of this, and because he's been following us, and because we know it and others know it, because if you have good intelligence, this is what you'll arrive at. That's the reason I said to a friend the other day, I'm still waiting for anyone to contradict our over 200 predictions since we came into existence. Not one has been contradicted, and none of the things I'm saying today will be contradicted. Or if you find any evidence to contradict us, we would love it because we want to be right, because we don't want to steer you wrong. Now, there are things we can't tell you, but we keep telling you hints, and one of the hints is there are sanctions. Why do you think this thing is exploding in Ukraine? Why do you think they have to send in a whistleblower through George Soros coming to their rescue to set up these crazy people at Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project to say, anybody who has anything on Trump, for heaven's sake, Soros will pay you anything you want. The juicier it is, the better. Oh, but we will put Julian Assange in jail for that and crucify him and die there as a prisoner of the Queen, but we will allow an NGO to create two-color revolutions in Ukraine, to create two-color revolutions. We've pointed out 14 of them.
But these color revolutions won't work when patriots are woke, when we are all educated and we know truth, and we don't fall for this anymore.
Exactly, and that's the reason we're naming some of them. So if you're a do-gooder and you're going to try to tell us that a group called Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is a good thing, then you show me one Democrat that has had one whistleblower report on them out of that group, and I will give you a nickel, because it ain't going to happen. These are more than partisan. These are hit groups. These are opposition research groups. 340 of them every single time. The Pussy Hat March. 124 of them were part of that. In other words, it came from so many directions at once nobody saw where it even came from. It came from George Soros, period. And his son Alexander's going to do the same. It's not good enough to lock him up. We have to lock up the people who are using this system. And once you see the system, it's not complicated. Arabella Advisors coordinates 340 groups that are attacking our Constitution. But it comes from one man. It looks like a grassroots movement. George Soros funds Black Lives Matter, Antifa, all of the worst groups you've ever heard of. That's who he is. Stop one man and his son and stop his theft and non-tax paying. All we have to have is someone running the IRS who has, one eye that works, because that's all it would take to catch George Soros evading taxes? Or
what you have at the IRS, you have a senior executive service person, or worse yet, the IRS is not our friend working there, and they won't do anything. I mean, the whistleblower complaint that our group turned in on David Brock with huge amounts of evidence has still, even though we received a number of our whistleblower complaint, we have still not received anything, and it's been many years. They protect these people. David Brock is being protected by the system. He needs to be busted by the IRS to pay back these taxes as a first measure.
He created Stormy Daniels,
yes,
and the other whore,
yes,
the
yes,
Playboy whore,
yes,
and the thing that went over to that crazy rag that they have over in Europe. So anyway, the point is, you ask about Joseph Mifsud. Well, at first I didn't know what to think. This is the most exciting thing I'd seen in the news, because it's the first thing I've seen in the news that we didn't anticipate. Well, second thing, those 3 spies sent in by Comey, one after the other, and the National Security Council should put Comey in jail for the rest of his life, as well as those spies, as well as anyone who knew of it. Well, we'll see what happens there. That was news. This is news. What? William Barr and John Durham.
That they were over in Italy, but we don't know that Mifsud was there.
No, Mifsud was not there because Stephen Rowe.
Yes,
they got him on the phone, and Stephen laughed and said, "Oh no, you're not going to see Joseph Mifsud in Rome. Why? Because he killed him. Or he certainly knew how he was killed. He claims that he talks to him, and it's a lie."
Did have an audio that Mifsud left behind, telling exactly how this all went down.
When Mifsud realized, and it's interesting because Mifsud's testimony. Remember, he was questioned by Mueller and released. Though he was then mentioned, 64 times as insinuated he was the Russian spy. And he was the one who set up George Papadopoulos. And he was the one controlling it all. Now he's missing. Well, so if really it's true that William Barr and John Durham met with their counterparts in Italy, and that Pompeo was meeting with his counterparts about Trump's very clear statement, he's checking in with all the world governments that were any part of the 2016 collusion. Why? Because meddling in the election, the supposed conspiracy collusion, blah, blah, nonsense. Because they have to find the roots of it, because they have to make sure that we haven't been overthrown. We may have already been overthrown. There may have already been a soft coup. I don't think so. Matter of fact, I'm telling you there wasn't. This has now turned into a hard coup. So every compromised player is now coming out, and they don't mind being compromised because they're going down anyway.
Soft coup, hard coup, doesn't matter to me. It's a coup. These people are trying to overthrow the republic. They are trying to shred the Constitution. And we need to get a pair, all of us, and put the gallows right there in the mall and get the business done.
And Schiff forgets that there is one form of military tribunal for those who commit treason. But there are 2 forms for domestic treason. And he has basically committed all 3. But anyway, going on with Bill Barr, and Durham. So if they're really over there and they're really meeting these people, even if it casually comes up, it's going to come up that 6 of their top intelligence leaders in Italy were all fired not long ago, and it's going to come up that it was directly related to a scandal related to the previous, more or less, Secretary of State, who then went over to Link University campus, which is where George Papadopoulos was a fake university professor out of the University of Malta, supposedly, which is nothing more than Stephen Rowe's Western Intelligence Training Center. Everybody knows this, right? That's where Michael Gates was met with George Papadopoulos and set him up and gave him his first whore. It was literally the Sacca, one of the ex-heads of Italy, who turned over Simone Maggiante, who is a beautiful, basically some say prostitute. She was a porn star, but some say just a star. But for sure, she was just paid. And she was supposedly, we have transcripts where Joseph Mifsud is saying, she was my secretary. I posed her as my secretary, and George Papadopoulos believed it. But I didn't ask for any 33,000 emails, Joseph Mifsud says. So what happened was, when Joseph Mifsud realized he was going to be assassinated by Robert Mueller, we told you where he went. Instantaneously to the Knights of Malta headquarters, which is an area in Rome, just like the Vatican, that has diplomatic immunity. He stayed there for a while.
But interesting is that he would get safety at the Knights of Malta.
Well, he's a Maltese. Even though every university he's been at, I checked it out, he stole money, he left under bad circumstances, and so this is just this is the continuation of his messed up life. So someone saw him when he was in London, and they introduced him to the Cambridge intelligence groups, which was about 4 or 5 different groups that Joseph Mifsud was involved in, and then his London law practice, that group, all these different groups with Arvinder Sambhai and Stephen Halper, all of them. We had pictures of it. Now they're not on the internet. But anyway, Joseph Mifsud was pulled into that group. He was suckered into it, and he was going to be the fall guy. And look, he is the fall guy. He's missing. So what they got was a tape the real Italian intelligence that hadn't become rogue and left the Italian government, interviewed Joseph Mifsud to get him out of the Knights of Malta house in Rome. And then Stefan Rose says he saw him at that point, and then he went to a hotel. Then he was living in an apartment. Lie. And he says that he had, knocked up this other girl. What is she? She's
weeds.
Wait,
we don't care
Joseph
about their
Mifsud's
babies.
Girlfriend is either Ukrainian or Russian. She's Ukrainian. So anyway, isn't that a coincidence? So anyway, when the Italian government interviewed Joseph Mifsud, he told them the story of what happened, and he said point blank, as he said in other places, and he said again and again, and Papadopoulos has said again, they were both framed and set up. I mean, he was told to try to pull George Papadopoulos into the Val-D discussion group, which was a group that met with Putin once a year, so that they could say, aha, you see, George Papadopoulos is a Russian and he's on the Trump campaign. Well, Mifsud was just trying to get in with everybody, Russia included. He knew nobody in Russia except his Ukrainian girlfriend. They actually talk about it in their text messages back and forth. I've read them. So anyway, Barr and Durham, if they want to be, will be two of the greatest attorneys in U.S. history if they do nothing more than a simple job of prosecuting even some of the crime that they see. Because what they've walked in...
It needs to be all of it. If we're going to go, well, let's go all the way.
You can't. You'd have to arrest all but probably what are there...
Okay, we have your first tier arrests. Then we go down to the second tier. We have time on our side. If we need to make arrests long after we're gone, Thomas, fine. People need to be held accountable for the crimes they've committed against the American people and the citizens of the world.
How about the ethics committee that pays off people who bring charges against senators and representatives?
That's a place where immorality goes to be extinguished.
I know. And so really, I would say there's probably 354 corrupt people on Capitol Hill. And anybody who's there a second term knows of this corruption. And if they aren't like a Matt Skate or a James or Jim Jordan or somebody like that, then don't trust them. If they're not out there really wrestling and they're sweating and they're fighting and they're grappling, then they're liars. So anyway, what's happening in Italy? Good news. It's also going to happen in Britain and Australia and in Canada and in Germany. And when that happens and Trump gathers it all together right before the election, as he declassifies the redacted copies of the FISA, and as he gives out Lisa Page's and Peter Strzok's real text messages, which probably do plan his assassination, which you assume, which there's insinuations of that in the ones we already have, you're going to see some changes, basically, as you said,
winning.
At the top of the
this
show.
Is what winning looks like.
But not only winning, it's controlled demolition of the Democratic Party.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Thomas.